Hi, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm here with Casey Lau. Casey's one of Asia's foremost tech startup pioneers. He's born and raised in Canada, but it was in Hong Kong that he had a successful e-commerce exit during the dot-com era. He went on to co-found Startups HK, the startup ecosystem community with 15,000 plus members in Hong Kong, celebrating its 10th anniversary in 2019. That makes it like really old by kind of tech standards.
Yeah,
This,
exactly.
yeah, this year also marks the 5th annual RISE conference, powered by the same team behind Europe's massive Web Summit, which Casey co-hosts and has helped propel into what is now the biggest technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship conference in the region. He's also managing partner at Dim Sum Ventures, an Asia-based prop tech fund dedicated to mentoring and investing in next-generation founders dedicated to emerging property and future of work technologies. He frequently speaks about building and developing ecosystems and community around the world. And Casey, thanks so much for taking a few minutes to talk to me.
No, thanks a lot for having me, Robert.
So you're based in Hong Kong, originally from Canada. What do you think makes the Hong Kong ecosystem special and maybe different to others?
All right, so you mentioned that this is the 10th year that we've been doing startups in Hong Kong, and basically I would kind of say that we did start it. The whole thing did start 10 years ago. So it's been 10 years since it started, and there was really not much going on there. We had the dot-com era, and so that's where I was raised in, and that's where the whole thing was, we spent tons of money on servers and dial-in, and there's some broadband, and people didn't trust credit cards on the internet, things like that, right? So that was 1999, 2000, right? So now it's almost 20 years ago. And and then of course it died down just like it did everywhere else in the world. And then it came back up here again with, the Facebooks and all these new companies. And I think that, to me, running Startups HK and looking at it from a Hong Kong perspective, we're a couple years behind the US. And when I say US, I mean, of course, the Bay Area specifically. So whatever was happening in the Bay Area, I could see 2 years later, it would kind of catch on over here. So if you look at today in 2019, I would say whatever's popular now in San Francisco, it is going to be here in 2021. Just in terms of the market understanding these things and getting to that point where they can see how they can make money off of it, I guess. So to me, smartphones have been around for 10 years now. Everybody loved iPhone and then all these new kinds of other phones from other companies. And but people just buy them and then sell them and trade them every year just to have a new phone so they can use Facebook, which I found incredible. Who would do that? But that's what they do here. Until one day an app called Uber came to Hong Kong. And basically, I think that was a landmark moment for people in Hong Kong, even for founders, entrepreneurs, everybody thinking that, okay, so you're saying that you can order a car with your phone. It's not just about telling people what you had for lunch or checking into some places or baby pictures and breakfast pictures on Sunday, which is the majority I see here still. But ordering a car on the phone was, I think, a big, big step forward. And of course, Hong Kong people are not only locked here. I mean, they've been to school. They go to school in Stanford. They go to school in Berkeley. They've seen everything that happens in the US. And so when they graduate, they come back here and they bring those ideas and that kind of mindset back. So I find like a lot of the successful founders here are the ones who have done that, either have studied in the US or have gone through an accelerator in the US and come back here with those kind of ideas. Because, we were discussing before this started, that you don't have to go to San Francisco. Well, I think kind of you do. It's not about the money. It's not about the talent. It's not about all the big brands that are there. There is just the mindset there. And, many people say that Silicon Valley is not a place, but a mindset. It is, but that mindset is in that area. When you go there, an idea, everybody in Hong Kong always said, oh, we should make our own Facebooks. Hong Kong people are smart enough to come up with their own Facebook. Yes, we could build a Facebook, true, but who would fund that idea? Nobody in Asia would ever fund an idea that was the idea of Facebook when it started, or Instagram, or Snapchat, or anything that's popular in the US today. So it's so that's what I mean. It's always kind of behind. When they see it, then they think about it, but of course by then it's too late. One of the things I remember is early on in Startups HK, we had one founder came up with this great app. You could take photos, apply filters, and share it on a sharing system. Fantastic idea. But because this team didn't have any photographers or any brands to work with, all the photos were pictures of coffee cups and stupid things that you see in your life, right? And then a couple years later, this app that came out was amazing. It was called Instagram, and it was identical, except that it had all the cool factor and everything that, you know, you could just build an app that took pictures, but you needed a little bit more to be able to make it like, you know, more exciting and cool and why people wanted to use it. And so that startup here, of course, you know, that's it. That was the end of that. When that came out, it was over. And even though they were already kind of ahead of that curve, because taking pictures and stuff like that was you know, a natural progression with the smartphone. So I find that we have the ideas. It's not like we don't have any ideas. It's just like the market just doesn't understand these things. And even the Hong Kong people who have all the, you know, they have multiple phones here. Everybody has an Android and an iPhone and tablet and whatever, but they don't seem to be going out there looking for new apps to use. They're just using games. They're playing games. When you're on the subway here, you just see people playing games. I don't know if you know if you still see Pokemon Go where you are, but guess what? It's very popular here still. And there's old people playing it too. There's like everyone playing it. When you see a group of people standing in the street, that's what they're doing. They're not. I always thought that maybe they're protesting or something, but they're not. They're playing games on their phones. It's quite incredible. So sorry, as you can tell, I told you.
No, I think I know. That's incredibly interesting. When you're when you're thinking of like founders who are from Hong Kong, right? And they're considering where to start their company. You know, you were talking about how you know, Silicon Valley, the mindset, and it's important to engage with that mindset, whether it's by going over there, learning, and coming back, or, you know, or having studied there, or whatever. What are the benefits of a founder from Hong Kong choosing instead to base their company out of Hong Kong versus trying to make it in kind of Silicon Valley? Or are there hybrid solutions? Like, what's the draw?
I think, well, one of our most successful startups here, it's called 9gag, and it's a very popular website internationally. And it was funny because I didn't even know the founders were from Hong Kong, because it's a very westernized. It's like a Reddit. It's like people post funny photos on there, and I guess they get upvoted and downvoted. It's very similar to what Reddit is, but it was founded here. So, but the guys went to Y Combinator and 500 startups. They went to 2 accelerators, and before moving back here, families here, you know, life is here. You can build a website anywhere. Once they raise the money, find the business model. So I guess it doesn't really matter. I just think that an idea like 9gag would never have gotten funded here. Nobody would have believed in those guys, no matter how smart they were or how many users they had. It would just never get to the next level as it would have as if it came from, and obviously it was funded in the US. They moved back here. So they're close to their family. Of course, we're going to say the talent is a lot cheaper. The rent, depending on I know their office is in like the far areas. They're not like in downtown San Francisco or downtown Hong Kong. They're like out in the suburbs area where they live and where most of the staff lives. So it's fine. They're not in the market, you know, cool area of startups, but they do their thing, and they're still doing very successful and very, very good. And then there's other startups that get the ideas over there and come back here and then find a market hole here. So there's another founder who's great. His company's called GoGoVan. And basically what they did was they looked at Uber, and instead of just getting cars for rent, here we have a whole network of minivans. So minivan, not like a soccer mom van, but like a minivan, these Toyota things. Here they use for transporting. Yeah, they use it to transport anything, right? Wood, furniture, groceries, supplies, whatever. And then on the back of all of them, they have phone numbers. So until GoGoVan came out, you'd have to actually phone these people up and tell them to come to your house, and they would give you a quote. And yeah, it's like cheap, like, I don't know, $12 US a trip or something. It's not that expensive, but it's a van that can hold, I don't know, I'm looking at them right out the window right now. And it's like, you could fit 8 people there, or 3 people in like all the photographer's gear or whatever. And so they basically did that. And they, you know, using the Uber idea of calling a car, they did that. And now you don't see any van with a phone number anymore. They have the GoGo Van sticker on the back. So you can just go to the website and then you can just call one like you would call an Uber, and tell them how much stuff you're carrying, where you want to go, and then they come and pick you up. And it's massive business that's grown across into China and Southeast Asia. So, and I don't think there's one like that in the US, or maybe there is. But you probably don't have these minivans. It's not a vehicle. I don't see those in Canada. So it's definitely for here only. And so they found that kind of problem, and then, that's the solution for it. So that's where I see the founders that do well are not necessarily just replicating things that are popular or successful in the US, but getting the ideas of the structure and then bringing it here and putting it into what is what people in Asia need.
So you mentioned a couple of minutes ago about how a startup idea would never have been invested, like 9gag would never have gotten investment in Hong Kong. So what is the investment scene like for founders in Hong Kong? I'm guessing that the answer is going to be about risk aversion, but is there an angel community there? Are there certain types of VCs that people usually end up working with, or do most people get at least their early stage investment from elsewhere, whether it's China or the US?
Okay, so definitely early stage seed funding comes from family and friends, right? Everybody has some cash here. You get 10 people together giving you $50,000, you're ready to go, right? So I feel like that's easy to get. I think a lot of people here do have a lot of investment money in those areas, but you're not going to get it like you get it in like a YC demo day, or like you get it a 500 demo day. You don't see that kind of money. And the number one reason I found out is because we do not have a lot of upstream or downstream, whatever you want to call it, investors. And we don't have Google, Facebook, Amazon to acquire you or to look at acquiring you. We have none of these companies that support it. So that's one of the things I found that, obviously the Bay Area has. Okay, so does New York, so does LA now, Toronto, London, all these major cities now are building these kind of ecosystems, which I think are the most exciting parts. And that's why, sure, it's not just Bay Area, but that's where it comes from. So angel investor comes in, puts some money in, knows that there's opportunities to go to that person's network to go for the next round, where then that person's initial investment goes up, sure, and everybody wins. So I would say in Hong Kong, we don't have that, right? Alibaba, Baidu, Tencent, these are our versions of the Amazons and Googles. They're from China. They're not really looking at Hong Kong, because no matter how big a scale you get to in Hong Kong, it's still like a pinprick compared to even the smallest market in China. So it's very hard to show scale to these big companies. And so that's why I find it to be a little bit more difficult for people to do angel investing or do some seed financing into a startup, because the next step up is very difficult unless that person has a network like they do in the US, right? I went to all these different angel conferences in the US and Canada, and I was shocked at how aggressive the angel investors were to get people into their network, invest in them, because they know where the next money's coming and they know how to make their money go up. So it's not really an investment in startups. It's more of an investment that they know, but hey, that's what investment's all about. Yeah. And that's something that, of course, startups don't understand either. They think an angel investor is coming there because they believe in their vision and want to help see them grow and change the world. Actually, they're just looking to make money. 30% return on the next round, which could be 6 months, could be 12 months, could be 18 months, is good enough, right? If it's an exit into as a unicorn, all the better. But I think in the short term, there's a huge upside to investing in an early stage startup that gets traction, that an Amazon or Google or even like any VC is interested in. It's already exciting. So that's what I see. And that's why I think in Asia, it's not that level, because we don't have that second level of investors, or the third or fourth tier, and then the fifth top tier, which is like the Facebook and Amazons, right? That's another play. So one thing in Asia I see a lot is all these big multinationals that compete with Amazon and Facebook, like you could say the Sonys, Panasonic, these kind of companies, the airlines, they don't looking to acquire startups, sure, right? Or if they do, they're ones like Shiseido in Japan. It's a very famous cosmetic company. So they acquired a lot of companies to get themselves familiarized with technology, right? But that's probably bought too soon and not really able to integrate with a 150-year-old company that makes like face concealer.
It seems like what you're referring to is like I mean, it's not like Asia that there's no money in Asia, and you have massive, massively wealthy companies that do end up acquiring folks like and investment firms like SoftBank and others. But uh, what I wanted to pick up on one thing that you said. It seems like Hong Kong's kind of stuck in the middle in some ways. They don't have the market size of China for Chinese investors and large companies to maybe take the interest in, and they don't have the natural access to maybe Western markets if someone is looking to develop an app or a business that may be fundable in the U.S., but they just aren't there. Would that be fair?
That's exactly right. You've got it exactly right.
So
Hong Kong is in this weird location. We are, I mean, technically we are China, but the people don't believe that. So we're like not China, and then we're not Southeast Asia, and we're not North America or Europe. So it's this weird spot in the middle that Taiwan and Hong Kong share that is a very political issue. So do startups in Hong Kong go to China, just suck it up and go in, or do they go down to Southeast Asia and tackle a market like Indonesia, 280 million people? It's bigger than the United States. Of course, the uptake of digital commerce is much lower. But what is the debate here, right? And so we're finding most companies are going to take the plunge into mainland China more because it is closer. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about the new initiative by Beijing called the Greater Bay Area. So we need to have you have a Bay Area, we need to have a Bay Area, but ours is the Greater Bay Area. And it includes, it will involve 88 million people in southern China. And basically it's going to be like China opening the door just a little bit so that if you go into the specific region, you can access Facebook. You can open a bank account in Hong Kong and get money in and out of China from this region only. Like you couldn't do business in Shanghai and Beijing, but you can do business in this 88 million person area that we call, which includes Hong Kong, Macau, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, and these other famous cities, but also these other, they call them second tier and third tier cities, which are, they never even know what an Uber is, right? That's how new it'll be going into these markets. But it's something I think that is going to give Hong Kong its competitive advantage in the next 10 years. And so that is something that I'm very interested in. And I think a lot of people are starting to put down flags on certain things and saying that this is what they're going to grow into. So don't count Hong Kong out yet for what it is. I mean, because I've been doing this for 10 years, and you can see the needles growing, moving slightly every year, but not a lot. Meanwhile, in Canada, my home country, when I left, there was nothing going on. There's just trees. Now, with the new prime minister in the last couple of years, it's gone so fast, and there's so many things happening there. I just can't believe when I go back what is happening, specifically in Toronto, than Vancouver. But there's just so much excitement there that I feel that I just see a massive fight for the future in all these different countries. Like I travel to all these different countries looking at all kinds of stuff. So although I'm based in Hong Kong, I spend a lot of time in Japan, Korea, Singapore, Taiwan, all these different countries looking at what's going on. And I can just see who is more aggressive in getting talent and also helping startups to succeed in their country. Because if you're not doing it, you're going to lose. And something like Canada, taking advantage of the Trump administration and not allowing, a lot of these people to come in and work in America, they're just going to move into Canada and take advantage of all the great stuff that we have there. Sorry, you'll have all these companies being built out of Canada that have customers in the US, right? But I'm sure that's another story. I don't want to get into that.
Incredibly interesting.
The idea is that I still think that so Canada is doing all this great stuff, but Canada still only has 25, 30 million people. So no matter how smart they are, they still have to come to Asia for their market, and it'll be great. Build a great company in Canada. There's a huge connection between Asia and Canada. So I feel like Hong Kong, especially Hong Kong, right? So Hong Kong will be definitely the starting point as they come into Asia to build out their companies, and I'm sure America as well.
So there's this stereotype of Hong Kong as being like a gateway to Asia, one country, two systems. There's a lot of stuff that kind of goes to reinforce that in a lot of ways. But and then on the flip side, a lot of founders that aren't based in Asia see Asia as this big prize with tons and tons of people and tons of new markets, and they get pressure to go into Asia and to enter into Asia and enter into it very early. But I know that you kind of maybe you have a different thought about that. So founders who are interested in getting into Asia, should they be thinking, at all costs, we just need to get in there. We need to get in there right away, or should they be thinking about it in a slightly different way?
Well, I definitely think it depends on the product itself, right? If you have an app that helps people to find restaurants, fried chicken restaurants or something very specific,
Yeah.
I think that's not a thing, right? I have worked with a lot of accelerators in the US, and a lot of the ideas sound very American specific. So obviously they're not going to work. And to give you an idea, Singaporean founders raise money in Singapore for their idea, and then they move out of Singapore, go to Thailand or Indonesia, where their market is, and build a company there. A, because that's where the market is, and B, of course, they can control costs much better and get better staff than they can in Singapore. So I believe that's what's going to happen anyway in Hong Kong as well. It's already starting to happen in Hong Kong. Instead of going down, everybody's going into China, opening offices in Taiwan. And this is what's going to happen. Like, because Hong Kong and Singapore are like two of the most expensive cities in the world, not just Asia, but the world. And if you're starting off, this place is not a place to come to like come here and try and find staff and try and find a market, because you just eat it yourself in 2 seconds, right? Whereas some place like Taipei is a great place, I think. Well, it's cheap, great talent, great everything that you could start out of. And still be outside of the firewall of China and still develop anything you would want as you were in the US or Canada or wherever. So I find that to be an interesting place. But definitely if you want to come to Asia, I would say that would be your mission, especially in an early stage. Like, you just move here and just be here and build your product here. I don't think this is a market to go into at an early stage. This is definitely, with Dim Sum Ventures, what we're doing is we're bringing B and C round companies here. We're not investing in early stage companies to move to Asia. They have to be the masters of their market first and then come out here. Because Asia customers are going to also look at, how good they are doing in the Western market, right? Nobody here, that's why startups also have a difficulty here, is that big corporate customers, they won't trust a startup. Like, no matter how much money they put into startups or mentor startups, they're not going to actually use their services until they've proven themselves, right? And so proving themselves in their own market, it's going to be tough to get them as customers, right? It's like, if you're going to make it big, if you're going to be the number one food delivery app in Vancouver, then that's great. Do that, and then take a look at Vancouver, right? Take a look at Hong Kong. Yeah. But don't think that you're going to do two things at the same time, because it's tough. So if you believe the future is here, come on down, do it here. But don't try to do it in two places, because I would find that to be incredibly difficult,
distracting. And yeah, absolutely. I think there's this inherent assumption that I'm building something that anyone can use, and whenever you hear that phrase, oh yeah, everyone will use it, then you got to kind of put the brakes on and make sure that
absolutely.
So can you talk a bit about Rise and the effect that it's had on the ecosystem since you've been
absolutely. So Startups HK started with a bunch of guys in a coffee shop just talking about startups, and we just tell people, "Okay, come join us if you want to talk about startups." And this is like 10 years ago, and every year just get more. Every week we do it, there'd be more and more people show up. But we were all in our own startups, so we were just like helping other people out. People like, "Hey, where do I find a developer? Hey, who's doing good hosting? Does anybody have any extra room in their office for me?" Things like that. So it grew and grew, but we're not really event people. But we would put on events, because it would seem like the number one thing that everybody wanted was more visibility to the media and to customers and things like that, right? So, of course, to say they spoke at the conference. So this is all what we did, and we scaled it up. We have a conference, maybe 500 people, 1,000 people. That's the maximum we'd ever do, because we don't even worry about getting Hong Kong people to that and Hong Kong founders to speak at it, because we didn't think there would be like, who would want to fly out here to speak at a conference in Hong Kong, right? Which is hilariously bad, short-sighted thinking on our part, right? Because then Paddy Cosgrave came to town. He's the founder and CEO of Web Summit, which is arguably probably the biggest technology and innovation conference in the world, like bigger than TechCrunch, bigger than anything I've ever seen, right? It's like 75,000 people in Lisbon now. And that's just the Europe conference. And so they opened one in the US called Collision, which is now going to be in Canada in May. And they decided to open one in Asia called Rise, and they picked Hong Kong as the location. So they're looking at a few other cities. Yeah. They picked Hong Kong because I think was a good choice, obviously. But the point is, like, it's in the center of Asia. You know, so you can come from Japan or Singapore up. We're in the middle of both, so it's easy to get to. It's very English speaking, so everybody can get around. It's very, very first world and very modern, and it's famous for its tourism here anyways, right? And so basically I met him at a dinner party, and we got along well, and I think we agreed on our ideas of how to help startups. And so basically he asked me to be the co-host, and I said, great. What does that mean? I don't know, but I'm sure I'm in. And so, and also I had never been to Web Summit before either at this point, right? I'd met a lot of the staff and a lot of the team come over and, you know, started networking with the ecosystem and things like that, but I'd actually never been to Web Summit, but I had heard about it, had a great reputation, and I'd seen the videos online. So, but I really wasn't expecting what I did on the first night that I did the walkthrough of the convention center with Patty, to see how professional it was and how high scale, high quality was. And then the speakers that showed up, that flew in themselves, like, we don't pay speakers. They all came in themselves to speak at this conference. You know, the head of SoftBank, the head of Sequoia, all these people came out to speak at this conference, obviously from the goodwill that Patty had built with them over the years at Web Summit, right? You know, they noticed a lot of Asia people for sure going to Web Summit. So I guess that's another reason why they started the conference here. But so this conference is obviously taken to the next level, right? Well, the first year we had 5,000 people right off the bat. This year we're going to be getting close to 20,000 people in its fifth year. And I feel like the conference, yeah, the ecosystem of conference building is incredible, right? It's like, I mean, I've seen it happen in Hong Kong. I've seen it happen in Lisbon because I've been to Lisbon all 3 years it's been there. And now I'm going to see it again in Toronto when it opens up the Canadian ecosystem, because Portugal and Canada, I feel, are very similar. They're like, you know, these kind of secondary countries. They're cool. They're doing cool stuff, but nobody really knows or cares. Personally, I had no idea where Lisbon was. I know it's somewhere in Europe, but I didn't know it was Portugal. I don't know what's going on in Portugal. And I get there, it's an amazing city. It's like incredible. The city is fantastic. The people are great. And then there's this ecosystem there already that we just drop our high quality conference into. It's the same thing with Hong Kong, but I think Hong Kong's ecosystem isn't as strong as the one in Lisbon or Toronto, but it was still able to attract such a big audience because I guess there was a demand and a hunger for this kind of conference in Asia, and there isn't really one. I mean, there's bigger conferences in China, but they're not, they're Chinese style. So they're a little bit more difficult to navigate for a Western attendee. But ours is, you know, more of a Westernized thing. So it's able to put a spotlight on Asia, but also bring the best from Silicon Valley and from Europe. And then of course, Asia and China to show off what's going on in this region. So there's good networking done for everybody. So I feel like that spotlight that the conference puts on the city and the region is just the best. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people told me it's a great conference, and I find it to be, you know, when I go somewhere, people already know what it is. Even when I go to San Francisco, people know what it is. So I'm quite surprised at that. And then it reached out that far. But it is a great thing. And it'd be great to be able to have this kind of conference in every city, because every city should have a spotlight like this at this level. To draw people into it and to see what people are doing. Because it's not, if you've ever been to a Rise or a Web Summit conference, it's not just a conference that goes on in the daytime. There's a whole thing in the evening as well. There's a lot of networking, you know, drinks, dinners, all kinds of things going on into the middle of the night that's all organized by the company. And that way you never feel like, what should I do after the conference? Who are these people? It's like the whole idea was to kind of push people together and get them to start to meet each other, so that when you leave, you met at least 5 amazing people that will either invest in you or work for you or help to promote you, or, you know, just in the same boat as you, but in a different part of the world. And that, to me, as an ecosystem builder, is like the dream of the job, the dream of the entire focus of the ecosystem building. And that's why I feel like it's almost like every city needs to have one, just because they need to show what they're doing, and they need to have it at a certain level. The government can't do it. It's got to be done by a private company. But I know that there's no way the company can expand any more conferences. 3 of these with like 1 million people over, the whole thing is enough for them. But it's always something I try to facilitate with other countries. So I know like it's inspired another event in Bangkok, Thailand. And so they've taken a lot of the cues from what we do and done their own. I mean, Thailand's a massive market and it's a very specific market. So I think it's great that they go ahead and build their own conference, show off what they're doing, and at the same time bring in you know, speakers from around the world to kind of like say, hey, you know, Thailand is not just the hangover movies, right? It's like there's a whole thing going on there. It's a massive market and tons of people trying to get into there. A lot of Japanese investors are going down there to invest in startups. So I feel like there's a lot of things going on here. I mean, it's like so many things going on. But I mean, it's not just Hong Kong. I mean, I'm talking about Hong Kong. I'm supposed to be talking about Hong Kong, but I do a lot of stuff around Asia, and I just find that the whole Asia has so many things to offer. So that, yeah, you need to come here, take a look at what you want to do, what city you want to be based out of, and then focus on that. Because, yeah, I mean, you could bounce around all over the town, all over the region, and there's just so many things that are going on that are attractive. But I guess if you're into like a specific vertical, like fintech, for instance, right? It's massive here in Hong Kong. So this would obviously be your stop, probably not Vietnam or something like that.
Sure. Well, thank you so much. I mean, this has been incredibly interesting, and especially I don't know, your honest assessment of where the ecosystem is now and what you're thinking of in terms of how it's going in the future. Certainly, it's going to be interesting to watch, and thanks so much for spending some time.
Great, thanks for having me, Robert.
Alrighty, take care.
Okay, bye.